This week, what we're really going to be talking about is how to manage cash flow as a business owner and how to stop using your business as a piggy bank. For most people, they started out working a W-2 job. Things were easy. Income came in, taxes were withheld. At the end of the year, they squared up on things. Some of their investments, like their 401k or HSA, et cetera, got pulled out. Everything was regular. But now you're a business owner. And what happens is for the first 1 to 2 years, people just use their business like a piggy bank. Money comes in, they'll just transfer it over to themselves. The next month, money doesn't come in. They're scrambling. They don't know what to do. How do we plan for this? Because they spent everything else. I think we have to segment this between years, right? So in the first couple years of owning a business, there really isn't any better system than, hey, money comes in, I need to pay myself out. It's going to be irregular. The way that you work around this is you create what's called a pay account. And right now, I'm just assuming you're a sole prop or a partnership or something along those lines where you can just transfer money via owner's distributions. Let's say January rolls around, you make $10,000. What you need to do is you need to look at your living expenses. You need to see, okay, hey, great, we spend $5,000 a month. The business is just getting started. I need to take money from my business. Hopefully you set yourself up well before you started your business. You saved a bunch in cash and you set yourself up so that over the next 6 to 12 months, you didn't need to pull everything out from the business. But let's assume you didn't do that. What you need to do is you need to look at your living expenses, and we're going to use that example of you spend $4,000 a month. So when $10,000 comes in, you pay your expenses. I'm assuming this $10,000 is post expenses. You're going to send $4,000 to yourself, and then you're going to go save that $6,000 to your pay account. February rolls around, you only make $5,000, right? $5,000 is still enough to pay your $4,000. You do that, $1,000 goes to your pay account. The next month rolls around and you have $0. You say, that's okay. I'm going to go to my pay account. I'm going to transfer $4,000 over to me. Now your pay account gets reduced. At the end of that quarter, you can look and say, how much do I have in my pay account? Is it a good emergency fund type? Can it help sustain my spending? If not, then you leave it. If it is and you have way too much extra, you send it over to yourself. In the first few years, this is what I found creates the most success. Create a pay account, pay your living expenses. Understand you're probably not going to save. In the very beginning, if you have to use cash reserves from your personal cash accounts, that's okay. Understand that's all part of building a business. If you go into a business thinking, I need to make enough to cover my expenses in the first 3 to 6 months, you're probably going to fail. So you want to make sure you come in with the right amount of cash. And then from there, you can start supplementing your living from your business, build up the pay account, and eventually you'll get to the point, hopefully, where the business is now sustainable. You build the pay account, pay it to yourself, build the pay account, pay it to yourself, income's lower, pay it back over to yourself. It's a pretty good system. The issue is that many people, they just get it, they pay it, they go buy things, they spend it, even though it's not really extra money. Then a tough month comes around and they incur credit card debt. And you just get stuck into this really bad system. So the pay account is my biggest recommendation for people in the first few years. After those first couple years come around and you are now a sustainable business, the way that you operate changes. And so this is typically when people come in to work with me and they sit there and they say like, hey, I need to figure out a better system on how to pay myself. And what we need to distinguish between is an S-Corp and a sole prop or a partnership. With an S-Corp, there's a couple good things about having payroll. One of them is that it withholds for taxes. It might not withhold the right amount, but you can help customize and make sure that you do withhold either at 22%, 24, 32, 35, 37, whatever that number is going to be. But you also then have business profits. So let's say you have a good business, you pay yourself $150,000 in salary, but you still have another $300,000 in profit. Understand that the withholding from that $150,000 salary is not going to be enough for your taxes. Because if you're an S-Corp, right, you have to pay safe harbor tax amounts. So let's say last year you owed $50,000 in taxes. This year you either need to pay 110% of that, so it'd be $55,000, or 90% of exactly what your tax liability is going to be this year. For most people, growing businesses, etc., the 110% matters. If you pay yourself the salary, that withholding might not be enough. So as a business, you need to create a system to say, I'm going to take out distributions quarterly to help pay my quarterly taxes. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see business owners make. They don't plan for safe harbor taxes. What happens is income comes in, they just let it build up, they pay themselves some, end of year happens, they go to pay their tax bill in April, and they see they, one, owe a ton that they didn't know about, and two, that they owe penalties. If you don't hit safe harbor, you owe penalties. All safe harbor means is if you hit this number, you don't owe any penalties. So if safe harbor is $55K, but you owe $200,000, you didn't pay any penalties because you have the 55 in. On the other hand, you only did 20, you're going to owe penalties based on that 35,000 shortfall based on when it should have been paid. If you're the other side of this where you're a sole prop, you don't have payroll, know that you're going to have no withholding. So every quarter, you're going to first start with monthly. You're going to pay yourself monthly, the income you need, but then every quarter, you need to make sure you take a distribution from your business to cover taxes. Let's assume that the business is profiting $15,000 a month and safe harbor would be $40,000. So you're going to say, hey, I have $15,000 a month. I need to make sure that at the end of every quarter, I leave enough to pay 10,000 taxes. We're not even going to get into the fact of like you need to save for an emergency fund or save for short-term goals. But in general, if you make 15K, you'd say, great, I need to save 33 for taxes, but you don't stop there. You also want to project out the rest of the year and say, hey, safe harbor might be 40, I'm going to owe 60. So I need to save the 33, which gets to 10,000 a quarter. But then I also need to save on top of that for what my tax liability is going to be come next April. Safe harbor, quarterly payments come around, you pay the amount needed, but then you bank and save the rest for later in the year. Later, come April of the next year, you're going to owe the tax liability. And what happens is a lot of business owners don't plan for that tax liability. First of all, they don't pay for safe harbor, but let's say they plan for safe harbor, but now they didn't plan for what they're going to owe above safe harbor. April rolls around. Oh man, I'm going to owe another $20,000 in taxes. What am I going to do? I didn't plan for this. I already allocated those dollars. When you're managing your business, the things that you need to get right after those first few years is you need to figure out what are you going to pay yourself per month. A lot of this goes with what your living expenses are at first. At first, hey, I spend $10,000 a month. I have to make sure I get $10,000 to my personal life. If you're an S-Corp, some of that would be salary, some would be distributions. If you're a sole prop or a partnership, that's just going to come as a direct transfer from business account to your personal account. But then you also need to plan for quarterly. You're going to say, I'm going to take out for safe harbor taxes. I'm going to take out the amount that's estimated I'm going to owe above safe harbor. And then I'm going to look at the cash reserve and say, do I have enough to pay myself personally an added bonus? You can do that part quarterly. You could do that part semi-annually. You could do that part annually. It all depends on the situation and the person to how you want to manage your business. But the big thing here is you have to stop using your business like a piggy bank. It's not just take whatever dollar out as it comes. You need to plan for your expenses, plan for safe harbor taxes, plan for the taxes you're going to owe above that. And then you also have to plan for an emergency fund. I think about this differently than other people. Some people say you need 6 months operating expenses as a business. Some say you need 12, some say you need 3. The way that I think about this is say, what does it cost to run your business? So some business I work with, they might spend over $100,000 a month, but a lot of that might go into paid advertising. It might go into different things that if the business wasn't doing well, they would cut it. So we say of your expenses, what would you always keep every month? That's payroll, that's rent, maybe it's marketing, whatever those are, we figure out that amount and then we say, how much do we need to save? So if that's 30K, I think you need at least 3 months of those expenses built up. If you're a seasonal business who typically only brings in revenue, let's say for 6 months of the year, you need to say, hey, I need also another 6 months of sustaining my business based on that average revenue and profit. If you're somebody that consistently has reoccurring revenue, you might not need to hold that much cash. It's all about coming up with a system that works for you, planning for your taxes, planning for emergency funds, and helping weather those downturns. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and go follow my page for more personal finance content. And as always, if you have any thoughts, please leave it in the comments below, and I promise to get back to each individual comment. See you next week.